Fourie is a professor of political science and vice dean and author of a brand new novel titled The Heart is the Size of a Fist. In this book, Fourie touches on themes of gender-based violence, memory, forgiveness and queerness by taking us on a young boy's journey of trauma and survival. Told from the perspective of a character named Paul, the young lad recollects stories that influenced his childhood and how that had had an impact on how his life turned out. Let me now rope in Professor Pieter P into this conversation for a further discussion on this book. And he joins us now via Skype. Professor, a very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning.
Tell us what inspired this book and why you decided on the title, The Heart is the Size of a Fist.
The book was homework initially. I spoke to a professional coach or a leadership coach at work, at the office, who encouraged me to share my memories, my recollections of my own past in writing, to facilitate greater joy in my own life and greater engagement with people in my professional life. So it was homework initially, and then only late in the process was I encouraged to put my memories and my writing together in the shape of a book, in the form that we have it today. The title of the book is inspired by one of the anecdotes or the accounts in the book, where the character Paul discovers a container, a small compartment in his mother's clothes closet, which was used in the past to hide precious things. And his mother tells him that she uses that compartment to hide the things that is close to her heart. Mm-hmm. And then Paul reflects that that space is the size of a human fist as well. And it sets up that tension, I think, in everyone's lives and in people's lives who come from a home of domestic violence and trauma, between the intimacy and closeness and love on the one hand, but also the violence and things that are ominous, strength maybe, on the other side within such a context.
And the book tells the story of Henry, who is very much inspired by your own life story. Speak to us about this young boy and his story as you tell it in the book.
The story is about the relationship between the main character Paul and his father. Certainly the first part of the book contains accounts of domestic violence, but also accounts of love and tenderness and closeness, and how there are tensions in relationships between people who come from a context like that. It's not clear-cut, it's a grey area rather than a black and white area. And what I mean by that is that Paul loves his father, but Paul also fears his father. And his father is a violent man, but he's also a man, I think, at that stage who tries to do better. And it's that tension that, in a way, rips young Paul apart and rips the marriage between his parents, into pieces, and then provides an account of how his mother and he have to flee from this context of domestic violence. Okay. And then the story develops into an account of how Paul becomes reacquainted with his half-brother later in life, but also finds a way back into himself and becomes reacquainted with his own real self, trying to work towards emotional survival within a context like that.
And the book is divided into two parts, time past and time present. Just unpack for us what each of these sectors cover.
The time past section refers to the accounts of Paul's early life with his mother as they have to grapple with this context of domestic violence and have to make sense of and survive and flee from this context of emotional abuse, as well as physical abuse. They have their house of alcoholism, essentially a house of addiction. And then time present refers to the current context. Now Paul as a grown-up, no longer a child, reflecting on that past and then trying to create relationships with other people that are real and that reflect emotional survival rather than being stuck in that past of violence and extremity.
And the opening chapter, I remember, details a recollection of a couple of events. Now speak to us about memory and how memory features in this book.
Memory is probably the key theme, memory and remembering. And the book is semi-autobiographical, and I found that when I wrote down my own memories of my own past, I, like Paul in the book, come from a house of domestic violence, a house of abuse, a house of addiction. One cannot quite trust one's own memories. I discovered that in remembering, one has to recreate events in order to do them justice. So the book is a reflection of not accuracy, not forensic detail in terms of what has happened in the past, but trying to also make sense and to find the truth behind those memories. Mm-hmm. So the entire book is set up with those two opening words: I remember, comma, and then there's a list of memories initially that I then discuss going forward. So memory is absolutely critical and key throughout the entire book. Paul's memories about his own life, but also questioning the veracity of those memories themselves.
And you say that this book is not a memoir, but an autofiction. Speak to us more about why you decided to take this route instead of making it either just fiction or a memoir.
Sorry, Simpiwe, I can't hear you very clearly. There's someone else talking in the background. Sorry.
Okay, sorry about that. You say that this book is not a memoir, but an autofiction. So do you want to speak to us more about why you decided to take this route instead of making it just fiction or a memoir?
Autofiction allows you to be liberated from pure memoir or pure autobiography. You can embellish, you can add details, but you can also select very carefully to leave out certain details that are not particularly useful to a story. So I'm quite actively promoting this as a so-called faction. So not quite altogether fiction, but not altogether fact either. And that enabled me as a writer to act more freely and to use memories that are useful to the story, and to then also color in around those purely autobiographical edges in order to enable a more reflective account of what the events of the past really meant, rather than simply providing a sort of objective, if that is possible at all, account of what happened in the past. So to move beyond mere description and to set it up as something that comes from only my own life, it enabled me to think more freely and loosely and in a more relaxed way about the events of the past. So this is not a work of absolute truth. This is, on the whole, I would say, a work of fiction or fictionalized autobiography.
All right, Prof, great chatting to you. Thank you so much for your time. We do appreciate it.
Thank you, Simpiwe.
All right, joining us there via Skype is author Pieter P. Fourie, and he's been speaking to us about his latest literary offering, and that's a novel that he had titled The Heart is the Size of a Fist.